I would like to express my gratitude to all panelists and moderators for very extensive discussion and of the problems and suggestions to for the solutions of the issues discussed. It will try actually to I will try to wrap up now just with several remarks. Actually, it's not the several remarks. We have made tons of remarks, but I'll try to be short in discussing each of the panels we had. Actually, I consider this a very, very important and interesting conference because, first of all, it was a challenge to organize it online. It was the first international such a with its scales conference IDFI had ever had, but actually I find it quite interesting. First of all, money-wise, because it is really cost-effective to organize such conferences online. Secondly, it gives and enables international visitors to watch and listen from distance. And but at the same time, having conferences on field is a different and more sexy. So I hope that the next conference we will have not online, but have the opportunity to see each other, communicate directly, and of course, hosting you in Georgia with Georgian cuisine, Georgian wine, and Georgian hospitality. And of course, without pandemics, flus or COVIDs, etc. So going back to panels, actually, the first panel, we got to know the main challenges in political funding and donations, which appears mostly to be political will, but not regulations. In terms of political finance transparency, our panelists introduced new changes in Georgian legislation and some best practices from other countries. As some of the main solutions suggested, we can highlight multiple democracy to deter the ruling party from having access to all the administrative resources and benefits they can give for getting donations. With regards to enforcing regulations that seem to be relevant but not working in practice, we had suggestions to have an independent oversight body, anti-corruption agency, for instance, that we have been actively promoting and advocated for, and that will have an investigative power which the State Audit Office in Georgia does not possess. It was also an interesting approach that laws might not be strict in terms of receiving and spending donations for parties, but making laws more encouraging for them to make the financial part more transparent. Public education and awareness raising is also extremely important, as well as all agree that honesty and reporting will be most encouraged while being demanded from people. Totally new challenge discussed by the panelists was social media spending in political campaigns. As the topic is very new globally, we have a lack of best practices, but some of the important suggestions, we are to have some legal regulations in the limits for spending in online campaigns, and it was really interesting to listen about the details about this. And finally, multi-stakeholder cooperation between state, private sector, and independent regulatory bodies can be very helpful in terms of political finance transparency. This is about the first panel, which was really interesting and challenging in terms of the topic, because it's, as I mentioned, it's a new one for discussion, and the panelists gave a very insight understanding of this topic to us. The second panel gave us more broad understanding of current standards and problems of lobbies. Clearly, problems were highlighted, but in terms of solutions, we had some good practical examples. We do all share the opinion that lobbyist transparency is a very important and legitimate part of policy making and that it needs to be regulated. Firstly, to promote good lobbies and obviously to avoid corruption risks and undue influences. But impact on the society of lobbyist transparency is also very important as it helps people to restore trust in their governments and encourages them to be more engaged in policy making, including voting. So I would like to call attention to the three lessons one of our panelists mentioned. Firstly, that voluntary registers of lobbyists does not work accurately, following with the needs to have strong monitoring and sanctioning measures and to have covered all the bodies that could be involved in the lobbying processes. The case of Ireland was quite interesting, as it was mentioned that the act regulating lobbyists was actively triggered by economic crisis, and it became a tool to decrease corruption. And what is more impressive, it was tied to the OGP National Action Plan. I have mentioned in my remarks that it is really important for Georgia to consider international practice, as the tradition of lobbyism is not that old in Georgia, and we need to develop it further by regulating it as well as just making it more transparent. And the last panel was especially relevant as it united two ongoing problems: use of administrative resources and COVID-19. As the panelists mentioned, Georgia's government have quite a long experience in abusing administrative resources before elections, and we had some famous and quite well-known examples too. As Ms. Catherine mentioned, it gives strong roots to state capture. It should also be noted that the international experience in investigating problems of cases like this and the processes terminating right after the elections is very applicable to Georgia as well. All the panelists brought up how the global pandemic encouraged governments to use social or corporational assistance programs for electoral processes. To cut short, main problems identified in the last few minutes were that ruling parties mostly have total immunity and power to use the budget and comprise both private sector and employees of public institution in all. For the list of remedies our panelists offered, I would stress out the oversight power of civil society and importance of engagement from society in general and especially from journalists. Of course, it's equally important to have an independent body controlling misuse of administrative resources, and what is more problematic, more specific definitions in the legislation. So this is just to summarize all the panels that we managed to do in the parallel and of the panels. And now I would like to say just concluding words that we had a really interesting discussions in all panels. And I want to once again thank our distinguished panelists and moderators for their excellent contributions. Our gratitude, of course, goes to our donors and supporters. We are honored to have been supported by the philanthropic organization Luminate. Also, once again, we are very grateful to the OGP, Open Government Partnership, and its representatives for their important and valuable contribution. Finally, the conference would not take place without great work of my team, IDFI, that they have really conducted a brilliant work and job, and also to our technical team who assisted during the whole conference, interpreters, and everyone engaged in the organizational work of the forum. With this, the Good Governance Forum 2020 is over. It was short. It was not like last year. It was not 2 days conference, but I hope you enjoyed it. It was a challenge, as I mentioned, to have it online, to be organized online, but I think we made it. At least we had a very interesting discussions and panels, and panelists and moderators once again. We will be back next year. Thank you for your participation and interest, and hope to see you at Good Governance Forums 2021 in Georgia. Thank you and wish you good luck.